Get in, my sweet listener. We are unblocking abundance. Yes. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm really excited to be back with you. Just before I started recording this episode, I did a ritual and meditation and visualization for the upcoming class I'm hosting, Embodying Abundance. I went into my garden and created 2 different flower bouquets. One was full of roses and helleborus and olive branches and lilac and lavender and other plants like white sage, some kangaroo paw plants, and also some incredible peonies from a bouquet that my partner brought me. I gathered malachite and rose quartz. I love malachite for specifically protecting the abundance we already have. I also gathered some kumquats that a neighbor had given us and a lemon that had fallen off a lemon tree that I had picked up on a morning walk. And I lit 3 candles that I hand poured last year. I've been trying to use all my own materials in my rituals and spells. And a lot of that has just meant I've created a bunch of my own supplies, whether that's growing the plants or creating the talismans or making the candles. And a lot of those you can buy in my shop. I also visualized the container of the class, a place where we could grow together and practice and explore what abundance feels like for us and be supported in embodying it. I imagined people healing ancestral trauma, being able to generate enough income to support those who need it, to be able to be in their most authentic relationship to abundance, to be able to pay off debt, to be able to pay reparations. I imagined these beautiful people living out their dreams, involving themselves in climate justice, making gardens and tending to the soil, sharing the gifts of innate worth, love, justice, and abundance with others, creating a ripple effect of abundance that played out in many different ways, whether it be tipping servers much better, whether it be supporting general strikes, whether that be in helping to organize more general strikes, whether that be investing in fundraisers or mutual aid, creating foundations and nonprofits, whether that be feeling more secure and able to receive all kinds of love from friends, love from intimate partners, if that's what they wanted, love from chosen family, creating connections intergenerationally of connection and love, being able to function with more space, more time, more spaciousness within, being able to cultivate a sense of prolonged safety and peace and radical generosity, and imagining all of that and more rippling out into the world, however it needed to, in whatever form they needed to. I imagined our collective abundance flowing through the collective over generations, an abundance of theories, an abundance of technologies, an abundance of different ways of thinking and different ways of being and different dynamics. and helping to aid ending the suffering that humans enact on one another, to help lessen the harm of abuse and insatiable sociopathic greed. The tarot cards that came to mind were the Six of Cups, the Ace of Cups, and then the 10 of Pentacles, which of course I had pulled earlier this morning. I also primed my pump, so to speak. Earlier this week, I drew the Ace of Pentacles, and I wrote a very long entry in my journal about some of these things I'm going to talk about today that I'll talk about more in class too. I don't usually share my magic, my process, my practice with people I don't know. Some of you I know. I'm lucky enough to know some of you who listen. But in general, you won't hear me. I'm not one of those people who shows pictures or talks about what I'm working on energetically, magically, or in ritual. But I wanted to share this with you to explain some of the ways in which I do work, to lay out how components of magic make their way into my work and my business and what I offer to the public. Often, before I even announce a course opening for enrollment, I will create an etheric container to keep it alive and to attract the right people for it. I will check in with my capacity. I'll check in with my intentions. And usually then the messages that I share, the energy, and any changes I make to the course, if it's an existing course, connect and follow suit. And then I will do a simple ritual, a spell to announce to myself, the field, spirit, that I'm ready. And I'll put up the signal, really, to those who are available and the right fit for my teaching style and suggested practices. And this time, it really was for folks who were ready to take action, because that's what we're really needing this year. We need to take different actions. And the last piece of my process is that I focus very intently on living out the teachings. I double down on them. And I make that the lens through which I take action so that I can be a month ahead of everyone. So I can be really intimate with the material. I can offer real-time suggestions, in-process suggestions. And also so I'm congruent energetically and I embody the teachings. I shared that with folks with protection magic. And like, wow, I was like, yep, this works. Check, check, check. Let's do this. So I've been doing this now with embodying abundance. This was a class I taught in 2021 and I loved. It was a very near and dear class. There were some phenomenal outcomes from folks. It was just absolutely lovely. I loved hearing. My favorite story was a participant told me that they asked for a raise at their workplace, and it ended up not just giving them a raise, but everyone else they worked with. Isn't that the coolest thing? Like, I just hear these stories and it makes me so excited. I did not teach embodying abundance last year. I didn't have the capacity. Things didn't feel in alignment for it. I don't do things just to make money. That's not enough for me. I have to create new things and it has to feel timing wise really in integrity. And so many other things came through last year. We did resourcing the creative self. It was so great. And better boundaries and protection magic. Those were 3 major life-changing classes that I created, that I was birthing and then holding space for, that needed to come out last year. So they did. And it felt very aligned. And I've been feeling now. I've been feeling offer this class now. It starts tomorrow. This is very current time. And I looked into the sky and I saw that right when I was thinking of offering it, almost to the day, right when I was thinking of teaching it, Jupiter was entering Taurus. And I thought, aha, okay, now I also know why. And that's another thing. I'll often intuitively pick a class date and then I'll look to see what's going on in the sky. And then I think, okay, gotcha. Gotcha, universe. I never use the stars to dictate what I do ever, but I do use the sky, the stars, the cosmos to confirm what I'm already feeling and doing. I do work with nature to be in my true nature. And so I wanted to offer up this episode to talk about some ways, some processes to unblock abundance, and so unlocking more abundance for yourself. Let us begin. Last week, I think I covered what abundance was. I don't remember if I talked about how, our ideas of abundance is influenced by colonialism and capitalism. I'm pretty sure I have. I feel like I talk about it frequently. I also believe I have an episode. No, I know I have an episode. We'll put it in the show notes. That's about like capitalism and how being anti-capitalist is also being an abundantly minded person. You can check that out. We'll link it in the show notes. What, again, I want to underscore is this is such a complicated, wide, vast, nuanced topic. And we cannot begin any big, large topic without being clear that society has influenced us, that Western culture, that histories of genocide, of chattel slavery, of theft, of war, and on and on and on have influenced who we are, where we are, what we experience, and so on. And my theory is that if we were all attuned to true abundance, which is radical generosity and feeling like we were enough and feeling like we had enough and we had all of our basic needs met and we didn't have to overwork tirelessly, override our bodies in order to simply survive, we would all thrive and we would all be living in pleasure and in true abundance. So let's just take a minute to tune into that new abundance, that form of abundance that is possible, which I do think is the true abundance, which is not about more, or like mindless materialism. It's not about competition, urgency, and so on. That is scarcity. That is insecurity. That's what that is, I'm bringing this up because unblocking abundance is a process that asks us to think about what we've been taught, how we've been programmed, how we live, how we interact with ourselves and the world around us, how that lives in our nervous systems, in our neuroplasticity, in our brains, in our consciousness, in our behaviors, and with our attachment styles. We need space to dream and envision what abundance can look like for us. For me, I always, when I feel like scarcity, when I feel urgency, when I feel anxiety around these themes, It's turning to nature. When I hang out with my garden, my rosemary bushes have no end of rosemary. I'd have to become a rosemary farmer, to use up all the rosemary. There are 1 or 2 times that certain flowers grow, and I get to enjoy the blooms while they're here and trust that they'll come back. I remember some of the things I did to recalibrate myself in order to work for myself, and what I'm doing now to continue to recalibrate myself to more natural energies of abundance, because it's this constant process that's not necessarily about a vocation or a job or money, right? In embodying abundance, I do leave it open to you to think about what area of your life you would like to open into more abundance around. And some folks do stuff around hobbies or spirituality or creativity or time. The biggest theme that has been coming up, which makes sense because it's been my little thorn in my little side, is time scarcity. Especially now, I have some theories about why everyone wants more time or feels like they don't have enough time. I'm working through that currently. That's my focus for sure. And I'll be sharing my notes from the field with y'all in class. But time could be your trigger with scarcity stuff. Today, I just wanted to go down the list of some of the tools and frameworks that can help us, that we'll be going into more depth around in the class. And hopefully this helps you. That helps you think about where you might be ready to open up to more, what shadow work maybe needs to be done, what nervous system recalibration can be started in order for you to embody more abundance. First up is opening to our true natures. Welcoming in imagination, intention, attention, practice, and embodiment. We cannot make our decisions about abundance in scarcity mode, although ironically, many of us do. I've done that before. I'm not ashamed to say that. It's okay if that's where you're at. I get it. We do need space to dream and play and imagine. Not everyone has that. Not everyone is privileged enough to have that space. And also, everyone can make space inside of them to play and to imagine. Everyone. I used to imagine in the car on the way to work. I used to imagine when I was serving people food. I used to imagine before bed and in the shower. We have to be intentional, which means we have to know what we want, and we have to give that our attention in relationship to our true nature, in relationship to what feels good for us. Many of us right now are shifting our identities and changing what we thought was possible because we're changing who we are. We're changing who we are, and then that changes what we think might be possible, and it changes what we want, and then it changes our attention, which then changes our practice and our behavior, right? And when we focus on what we want, that grows over time. When we practice going after what we want, practice is action, and then that becomes embodiment. And that's how we can unblock around just about anything. And embodiment does not mean we're free from chronic pain or from people being jerks or from unexpected hardship. Spell work, magic, protection magic, none of that can stop life from being life. Embodiment does mean being energetically attuned to who we know our souls to be and what we're ready to experience. And that often comes from what our heart and our imagination and our dreams tell us. So what are those big dreams? What are the dreams that won't leave you? What is your heart saying when you tune in, when you clear away all the clutter and the distraction and the noise? What's the energy of that, and how does that fit into your natural self, who you're becoming, not the identity of the false self. Knowing yourself and your needs in a way that feels right, not a should, is an important piece of all of this to get clear on. The second practice, the second component I believe is needed, it's good old-fashioned shadow work. Yep, you knew I was going to say that, right? It's getting into contact with our unconscious and subconscious mind and changing up what's going on in there, down there. We all have areas where evil Kermit might be running the show. We all have areas where we self-sabotage. Often, I have found when I am ready for a major shift, when I'm ready to grow and expand, my inner evil Kermit, still cute. She's still very cute, by the way. Evil Kermit is still cute, okay? You can't see his eyes, but he's still cute. My inner saboteur will come up. Resistance will come up. My bullshit ideas about what I can't do will come up. So often, congratulations, when you're in a little pocket of self-sabotage, that's often a sign, honestly, that like there is some form of change and transformation and goodness on the way. But figuring those out proactively in your life, that's key. You're not going to do this with shame, with blame. You're going to do this with curiosity, knowing shame is going to come up. Shame often protects us from feeling a depth of sensation, which is why pleasure, nervous system recalibration, enjoyment, titration, enlightenment, practice, glimmers are so important. Because shame often is protecting us from feeling into depth and feeling into expansion. So shame will come up for sure. And shame always has messages for us, and shame almost always simply needs to be loved and witnessed, which is why my best friend, the compassionate witness, comes up. I'll probably do an episode on the compassionate witness because it's an important part of this. Shadow work also is zooming out and looking at patterns like we are a detective, like we're curious, noticing what happened when, noticing our behaviors. This is why lunar work is also my best friend. It's why lunar work is so great, because it's like a clock for ourselves. It's like our own spiral. It's like our own spiral time clock. That's why I was like, oh, the moon helped me with so much. It's why I am called the Moon Studio. It's like this rhythm of our patterns, which includes our bodies and includes our energy and our emotions. We can be with the moon and use that as a timer of ourselves and our intuition and have a record of it. And we can check out our ideas about our identity. If we've always been, in quote, the bad one or the outsider, then we might create situations subconsciously or even unconsciously where we are going to continue to feel that way. Or B, we will assign meaning from events that are neutral, that supports a specific traumatized identity or supports our trauma response that then creates a habit. So for example, I think some of you are like, WTF, what's she talking about? So an example of this is, say you go on a date and the reality or a reality of the situation is you just didn't vibe. You didn't align. They were really into something you weren't into. You were into something they weren't into. It just didn't. It just was like, okay, we didn't vibe, becomes in our brain, no one will ever love me. And if I were more lovable, then this wouldn't happen. And then our nervous system follows suit, or our emotional pattern follows suit, because there's a pattern in place that involves chemicals and neural pathways and some kind of identity, some part of us that is vying for control and wants to be supported and doesn't know how to be supported always, but is trying to get your attention so that you can love that part of you. Often, those of us who have histories of trauma, those of us who have CPTSD, will often think they're the problem no matter what. So if something doesn't work out, or there's a bump, or anything else, guess what? That's another excuse to make something your fault. That fits the narrative that is simply a neural pathway in your brain that you're at fault. Guess what? Maybe it's not your fault. Maybe something not great happened. Maybe someone's a jerk. Shadow work includes a lot of things. Ultimately, it's about looking at the things you don't want to, but are there, clearing them and or loving them, and in doing so, no longer letting them run the show, giving them consent if we do want them to run the show. Parts of our shadow are the gifted self. Parts of our shadow are the golden self. Parts of our shadow are the part of us that shines, but we've hidden away for many reasons. We want to make them feel safe to come out. We want to invite them out, and we want to let them know that they can be allowed to blossom and integrate. The next is, and you know it, you know where I was going with this, it's getting the body to be our friend. Embodiment. We got to talk about our friend, the nervous system. It's nervous system capacity. It's nervous system flexibility, fluidity, agility, strength. It's creating a healthy nervous system that can deal with more abundance. We often relate to the world through the lens of our nervous system and our subconscious and our upbringing and our gender and our past and, right? We often create a reality that can, I suppose, support the capacity of our nervous system. This is why nervous system attunement and befriending the nervous system and creating resilience in our vagus nerve is so important. Abundance is so much about capacity, the ability to hold pleasure and enoughness and love and worth and security, and then to expand, whatever that looks like, to go deeper, to be more expansive, to explore the different parts of ourselves. And abundance is so, so much about receiving. I believe we talked about that last week. I shared a bit about that in the Patreon as well, in one of the many, I think last month's mini-sode. So there's that. And along with the nervous system, I'll bring up attachment styles. It's a feature. You can ask, what is my attachment style to abundance? Because that kind of goes part and parcel with what is your relationship currently to abundance, or currently to time, or currently to love, or currently to whatever it is you're going to be doing a deep dive around in class. Are you disorganized like moi, I flip back and forth between avoidance, secure, and anxious fun? I'm also a commitment phobe, so that tracks. That tracks. I'm a recovered commitment phobe because I will have you know that I have been running a business for 10 years. So there's that. And I'll have you know that I've been partnered in a committed partnership for about the same time. So I will have you know that we can change, but I still have some tendencies towards disorganization. And yes, I mean it in all senses of the word. I could be better organized. Let's put it that way. She's working on it. She has ADHD. Fun. Okay. Are you avoidant? And you're like, nope, no abundance. I'm going to be an ascetic. I don't want anything. I'm a super enlightened Buddhist who doesn't want anything. Nope, not me, not allowed here. Are you anxious? Are you just gripping abundance through your little tight paws that are just like little fists and you're trying to control and #manifest your way into whatever you think will grant you security and safety and love? Yeah, just some things to think about. And of course, we know that our attachment styles also help build certain patterns and behaviors. Ultimately, change work is about changed behaviors. So when we relate to something differently, we then can change our behavior accordingly. So thinking about if you tend to lean anxious, so that's like overly attached, right? In Buddhism, it's like grasping, right? The grasping mind. We have to detach our need for the form it needs to be in. And also, it's important to be invested in it enough to understand that it is of value and it is an experience that we want. So total detachment or avoidance is not even asking ourselves questions around what we might want. When we stop avoiding abundance because we might be afraid that we'll never receive it and greet it, what could change? Something else that a lot of people don't really talk about is the kickback that happens when you get something you want if you have a history of trauma or if you haven't opened up your energetic field to receive. I call it the up-leveling kickback. I wrote about it in many moons ago, maybe 6 years ago. No one was talking about this, and I wanted to talk about this. We know that with trauma survivors and maybe even some neurodivergent folks, HSPs, our nervous system will often interpret change, any kind of change, with disaster or something being bad. And so our nervous system then gets dysregulated and we might behave in ways that can't hold the good thing. Or we might equate the good thing with it not being a good thing. And that combined with our energetic baselines, our habits, our class, our race, our societal conditioning, all of these very complicated components that go into a real life human being can lead to self-sabotage or not being able to hold the abundance. It's so much about capacity. And that's why I called the class Embodying Abundance. We have to retrain the nervous system so that we don't totally panic and reject the thing we say we want and that we know really deep down inside that we want. I tell this story in class. I'll tell it here if I forget to tell it in class, because why not? We can all learn from my story. And my life is living proof that change is possible for survivors and that abundance beyond our dreams is possible. I found it in so many ways. Obviously, we always have to find it in ourselves. That's really the hashtag pro tip. Our access to our true abundance is always within and is with the Creator, the One. And what I want to say for all of you thinking we have to, totally love ourselves perfectly before something happens or something appears, that's just not true. We often heal and learn through being in relationship with, and also by being in relationship and growth with the thing that we're calling in and experiencing as well. I always thought I was very super emotionally available. I can hear my very punny partner being like, "Oh, you thought you were super emotionally available. You were just super emotional." Waka waka waka. Anywho, I thought I was really available, and that dating emotionally avoidant people like made me open because they weren't very available until I met my partner. My partner is very present, secure attachment style. And guess what? Ding, ding, ding. You guessed it. Who turned out to be the emotionally unavailable person? It was me. It was my evil Kermit, my adorable evil Kermit. Or should I say, I was more emotionally unavailable than my partner, who's very available and very secure and very okay with love and very healthy partnership. And so on some level, we're going back to our behaviors, our subconscious, our attachment styles. On some level, dating people who were not available for energetic and spiritual and emotional vulnerability and connection was my way of avoiding that. So you can look at where you might be choosing situations that distract you from what you say you want. You say you want X, but are your choices and your actions also saying that you want X? What choices are you making to go into that direction? When you take the goggles off, when you clear the lens, when you understand what's going on with the avoidant self or the subconscious, whatever is distorting your view, what's really going on, right? What's really going on? And in class, we'll talk more about the nervous system and, working with that and titrating and all of that stuff. We'll do that there. But you can do it immediately by figuring out what some of those core wounds are, with titrating the expansion of your nervous system. You can do it really simply with gentle exposure therapy that definitely includes visualization. You can imagine your dreams and attune your nervous system to them over time. It's a practice. You can start today. Then when you find yourself in situations that have the same energy and essence to that, then you also say, I'm safe. You also make new shapes in your body and your nervous system of safety and security. And this is a process that you do over and over. And it's a process you'll do probably most likely as things change, which is very frequently. Things change very frequently. I'm still doing it now. I realized I was in a certain nervous system response to abundance happening in my life that I hadn't experienced before. So I didn't know what to do about it. Like I didn't really know how to respond. So I went avoidant for a while because that's one of my attachment styles. And that was a response. And if I'm being super honest, I got a tax bill that kind of snapped me back into responsibility mode and current time and into my window of tolerance, and also reminded me of the possibility that the Moon Studio could continue to make more money. And what then? I went back to what I teach, and I really reconnected with my deepest self and started getting curious and started imagining. I was like, oh, if I make more money, what could I use that for? What cool projects could I make? Could I take 3 months off? Could I make something I've been wanting to make for a while? Okay, so now I'm humming and I'm back in abundance mode. I'm back in play mode and I'm motivated because I'm back connected to my nature. And my nature needs a purpose. It needs an intention. It needs to feel like there's a reason for my abundance, to be honest, and to be in alignment. And I'm sharing this as an example with you to underscore that this is a process. And as we continue to grow and change and expand, especially those of us who are sensitive or have histories of trauma, we'll be doing this stuff. We'll be doing this nervous system stuff and ancestor stuff and past life stuff and shadow work and subconscious stuff. We'll be doing it maybe for the rest of our lives. And also, it can happen more quickly and easier, and it can ripple out into more beauty and enjoyment and presence all around. Okay, I have so much more to say. This was a very abundant episode. I had to cut so much, but I'm sure I'll share it in other places with a bunch of y'all. I will continue to unblock abundance, which means coming up with new ways of being in your body and relating to your body in ways that are much more healthy and supportive. It's opening up to more support, more vulnerability, more beauty, more growth, and rewriting new ways of being in the world. It means coming up with values that are in your integrity and practices and behaviors to help clear greed and scarcity and white supremacy and urgency and shame and separation from ourselves and one another, which ultimately results in more love, connection, creativity, and growth. So I'm going to continue personally. I'm going to continue to welcome in more and more ideas of what abundance can be by allowing in more abundance and more security and enoughness and more presence into my life and more intentionality and attention. And I really hope that you will do the same. I'll see so many of you in class, in abundance school. I'll see some of you wonderful people who I just adore so much in the Patreon. Some of you IRL, some of you via the internet or on the astral plane. Until soon, fuck white supremacy, fuck gun violence, fuck violence of all kinds, transphobia, homophobia, all of that stuff. I rebuke thee. You gotta end. RIP patriarchy. I'm giving so much love to all of you. Be good to yourselves and to one another.